I want to kick us off with a tip sheet that Salesforce provides, and it's because it has some great pieces of information that will provide you with some of the language that Salesforce uses. If you're a seasoned administrator, this will be a refresher, but if you're someone that's new to Salesforce, there are some great explanations in this tip sheet that I really want to share with you, and it will set you up for success both for the exam and in the work that you do. The first thing we're going to be talking a little bit about is the idea of objects, profiles, and permissions. So let's talk a little bit about what that means, right? Okay, I'm going to begin talking specifically about objects, and then looking a little bit at profiles, and then I'll get into permission sets. An object is a type of data, right? I like to call it a bucket. It's almost like it houses certain pieces of information, right? And those pieces of information are generally fields, right? So in your contacts, you have first name, last name. Those are the fields that live in that bucket, all right? So it's almost like a category, if you will, and that helps you differentiate between the first name of a lead and the first name of a contact, for example, because a contact is a different object to a lead. All right, so think about it like a column in a spreadsheet. A record is a particular instance of an object, such as a contact. So, for example, if you have an account and the account name is ABC Records, we would say, or ABC Industries, pardon me, we would say that ABC Industries is the record. And if you ask me what kind of record, I would tell you it's an account record. In this case, John Smith is a contact record or lead record, right? So we have records, and records are made up of fields, right? So John Smith is the record. The fields such as address, shipping street, billing street, those are fields. Those are attached to the record. Okay, so that's what we mean by an object and a record, and I've spoken a little bit about fields. Now, let's jump into profiles and the kinds of profiles we have, right? Now, we have something called an object level permission, and we give someone an object level permission by assigning them a profile and permission set. These are important pieces of information for you as you're thinking about this exam that you're about to take. What is an object? What is a record? We've just spoken about that. What is a profile? And what permission does that profile give me? So let's talk about that. Let's say I have a profile, and that profile is a read-only profile. It means that someone can view it but not edit or delete it, right? So this is a read-only profile within this object, okay? A standard user can view and edit standard platform objects but can only view and not manage campaigns, and can only create and not review solutions. So, for someone who is thinking, what am I talking about? What are you trying to say, Warren? Based on your profile, you can access or edit certain objects, right? So, you may have in your company something like a contact, right? And you may be able to edit, add, or delete certain contacts. That's because your profile allows you to edit that particular object, records in that particular object, right? However, in another role, you may only be able to view certain objects, right? And so this is what I'm talking about. Your profile impacts what you can do with the object. All right, so if you have read-only permissions, you can only view but not do anything else. If you're a standard user, you can view and edit standard platforms, objects, but can only view and not manage campaigns, right? Now, throughout this course, I'm actually going to show you exactly how we edit this, but this is just an overview. So we can have standard platform users, marketing users, contract managers, solution managers, and system administrators. What I recommend is actually printing this out from the attachments and using it to decide the access that you give to certain users and what that access actually means. And if you're an administrator, have a look at certain people's, what users they are, and after reading the descriptions, figure out if that's appropriate for their role and whether their profile may need a bit of changing. Okay, so in the Professional Enterprise Edition, and these various editions here, the Developer Edition, you can use standard profiles to create custom profiles and create permission sets for all your business needs. From the setup, you can go to Profiles in the quick find box, and you can click Permission Sets. Let's actually do that together. So if I'm in Salesforce, I can go to Setup, I can go to Manage Users, I can go to Permission Sets, and can actually create a new permission set. And let's look at what that happens. So we can create a label, an API name, and a description, and we can choose the license that we have. I'm not going to do that, but this is just for demonstration purposes. We can also specify default access to records with organization-wide defaults. All right? What does this mean? This means that within the organization, you can decide the level of access certain people have to information. That information, for example, can be full access to information. So that means everyone can see everything. You can also transfer public read, write, or transfer. In other words, people will be able to read, write, and shift that information around. You can have public read, write, which means that people can actually edit information. You can select public read only, and you can also select private. That means that you're able to shift the levels at which people can see, and you may have some very sensitive information that you don't want everyone to see, right? But let's look at some tips. One of the things that's important to know is that solutions are accessible to everyone, right? But the key thing to take away, and this is something important for the exam as well, is that when you're granting access, it's important to note that hierarchies play an important role in this. For example, a sales manager would be able to see what their sales team is producing. However, people in the sales team may not be able to see each other's information, and that's something that you would specify the hierarchy within you as an administrator, right? So that's really important, and that's something that can be done in sharing settings. If I scroll down, and this talks a little bit about the hierarchy, right? I've sort of given you a precursor to this. Users can be assigned to one profile and one role with as many permission sets as your edition allows, right? And this works together to basically figure out what people can see, do, and not see, right? So the profile contains the user's object's field level permissions, right? However, the hierarchy, in other words, the user role, influences what they can see or do. So their role is something that they can influence. Let me give you a classic example of this. In this example, you can actually look at different roles. So for example, if I had a product-based sample, I can see here that we have the executive, and underneath the executive we have managers here. These managers can see, edit, and view information underneath them, but they can't see each other's, so different departments' informations. But the CEO, who's at the top of the hierarchy because of her role, can see everyone else's information, including her VPs and their direct reports. this can also happen across organizations. So, for example, you can set it up so that this manager can see both theirs as well as other people's performance, essentially. Okay, so that's an overview of that. And the specific thing to know is that the role influences what they're able to see, and you can actually edit that role. Finally, how do we share records with sharing rules, right? So a public group gives you access to any group you've created. A role gives you access to members in the hierarchy, and roles and subordinates to give access to the members of the role, including their subordinates. So what does that mean? The role and their subordinates. Okay, wonderful. So let's take a look. You can actually create a rule, and what you can then do is figure out what team it applies to, and you can figure out what they can do with that. So is it read write? Can they edit? Can they delete? And so you can also configure that according to role, right? And you can also make it private so that it's only viewable to you. You can also set up certain criterias for sharing. For example, if the industry is in chemicals, then only them will they be able to actually see the information, for example, read it, edit it, and the like. And I just want to finish this session up by talking about sharing rules. You can have account sharing rules, territory sharing rules, asset sharing rules, and campaign sharing rules. And what this means is that you can share from one organization to the next. You can share based on where you are in a territory, for example. You can share based on specific assets that you have. Or you can share specifically around campaigns, certain sales campaigns. And that means you can share information across teams based on that. So with this brief overview of some of the most important concepts, we will be diving in to these in more detail, talking about permissions, profiles, roles, licenses, looking at the organization setup, the user setup. But this is a great all-encompassing snapshot, a summary of the entire course, if you will, and some of the important things that we'll be diving into as we go through.